medication, he does not receive the same 95% efficacy that a healthy person would. We don't know how much protection he has, if any. He will attend school in person next year because he deserves to participate in all the excitement that comes with senior year. He will wear a mask in school regardless of the district policy, since he will be in a classroom with kids who may not be vaccinated. You see, whether you may know it or not, having a choice of getting a vaccine or not, wearing a mask or not, is a form of privilege. Privilege my son does not have. So my plea is to parents, please try to understand and explain to your kids that some students and people will wear a mask regardless of mandates. This is to protect them against those who choose not to vaccinate and choose not to wear a mask. Please be tolerant of those students who have to wear masks to keep themselves safe from COVID. Chances are if they get COVID, it will be worse than a flu. People dealing with cancer, organ transplants, leukemia, intestinal bowel disease, rheumatoid and psoriatic arthritis, and multiple sclerosis may continue to wear masks because they may be on immunosuppressive medication. I envy those parents who expend so much energy demanding their healthy child not have to wear a mask. Maybe at 4 o'clock tomorrow, you'll remember my comments and think about my son giving himself an injection. Maybe that will help put things in perspective. Maybe you'll give thanks that your biggest worry is your child wearing a mask. Thank you. Thank you.
Next we have Sophia Perez Miguel. I apologize if I didn't.
Sophia Heagle, but
Oh,
you were close.
thank you.
This is my daughter, Sophia. She's going to speak. All of these are her words. I just kind of helped her organize them a little bit.
Dear Rockwood School Board, my name is Sophia Heagle. I am in the 4th grade at Eureka Elementary. Before I say anything else, I just want to thank teachers and staff at my school for everything they do for us. We moved here in November, and they have made me feel safe and welcome. I know you're talking about wearing masks at our school, and I just want to show my support. I'm okay with wearing masks because it keeps teachers and staff safe. I would feel terrible if I got one of them sick, and they do so much for us, and wearing a mask and keeping them safe is the least I could do. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Sophia. Next we have Jennifer Biermann.
Okay, so I have to go after that. She's adorable. Hello, Dr. Miles, President Bays, and Rockwood School Board. My name is Jennifer Biermann, and I am a Rockwood parent. I am standing before you today to say thank you. Thank you for all you have done this year to keep our children safe, to make things as normal for them in an abnormal year as possible. Thank you for following precautions in a confusing and evolving environment. More than anything, thank you for your statement that was read at the last meeting. Thank you for making it clear that racism and harassment will not be tolerated. As much of what has been happening in Rockwood has come to light, I've watched and read in shock and dismay comments, statements, and harassment coming from parents in our district. My mouth dropped in disgust as community members came together in a protest against diversity and inclusion, and people denied my friends their own lived experiences with racism. As a woman with white children, these comments made me uncomfortable. I can only imagine how they made families of color feel, how their comments made families of different abilities, different religions, and our LGBTQI families feel. It was appalling. Only the thing is I don't have to imagine. All I have to do is listen, and what we are hearing is they are hurting, and they are scared. They are scared of these parents. They feel bullied to be quiet as people deny their own lived experiences. Harassment is bullying. The revelations that the FBI was involved, the confirmation of threats against 2 of our Black administrators, the news that parents are relentlessly attacking and harassing you, our superintendent, our school board, our principals, and our teachers is appalling. It is not okay. Racism in Rockwood needs to be addressed. Discrimination has no home here, especially for families who already feel marginalized. Thank you for making a statement. I look forward to seeing and supporting the actions around building an inclusive environment for our already diverse community. The harassment, the threats, none of that is okay, and I truly believe that cannot be the full extent of our Rockwood community. Not for you, and it's not okay for our students to be bullied and harassed in the same way. On behalf of my family and many others, some of whom are here with you today outside, we stand with you. And as we look back to the past, thank you for moving Rockwood ahead. Thank you.
And next is Jessica Risenhoover.
Thank you again for hosting an opportunity for the community to speak with you guys. The diversity and inclusion is not a one-time effort or activity. It is an ongoing endeavor to create a culture where everyone feels secure, respected, and accepted. Those are powerful words. Those words weren't written by me or anyone at Rockwood or a left-leaning political group. Those words were spoken by Tim Wentworth, the president of Express Scripts. He did so in 2019 when this local company was recognized for their diversity hires, including as a top company for LGBTQIA employees. Rockwood's DEI efforts are not a new idea. The largest area and national employers have made this commitment a long time ago. We do not do our children a service by whitewashing curriculum or excluding others. Being gay or a person of color is not a political agenda, and students in those groups have a right to see their perspective reflected in the curriculum, even if that makes you uncomfortable. I appreciate that the Rockwood School Board, administrators, and teachers have stood by their commitment to create an inclusive environment. The path forward has never been easy. It requires steadfast bravery. Dr. Miles, Dr. Hogan, Dr. Harris, and Dr. Fowler, thank you for your bravery. The rest of us must now be brave for the good of our children, our community, and the future of the United States. Thank you so much.
Next is Fabian Marta.
I'm a Rockwood parent. I'm a Mexican man. My wife is black. We have diversity in our family. My kids look white, and her kids look black, obviously. You know, we don't want our kids to be labeled as oppressed or oppressors. I think that causes a racial divide. There's a lot of people outside, and not all of them are Rockwood parents. They go from place to place. They do not, you know better than I do who lives in this community. It's farmers, it's business owners, it's people, just everyday Americans, not racists. You know, I don't want, so you know how this works. The voucher system's almost here, and if the school doesn't represent my values, we're going to take the kids, and now you're competing against private schools. So I implore you to listen to the people that live in the community, people that are paying taxes to Rockwood. Otherwise, you're going to see an exodus of students, and they're going to be moving to private school. You know, stop helping us. Equity doesn't make sense. Nobody's equal. Some kids need more help than others. There's no reason to push this critical literacy, this critical race theory. I know that it's causing a major divide for us. Another thing, I have a very nervous little girl, and you know, masks, as we all know, don't stop viruses. And we need to get off this mask thing, follow the CDC's guidance. It doesn't make sense. That's it. I'm a parent. And you're going to lose a lot of students when the voucher system comes if you don't represent me, because there's a lot of parents that feel the same way I do. All right, good day.
Next patron is Tom Brock.
I thank our police officers for their service. I'm Tom Brock. I have 4 kids in the Rockwood School District. Over the years, our family has faced serious health issues with our kids. And whatever we faced, we always made an informed choice based on research. When my child had heart issues, we did research on the heart, uncovering every aspect of our child's condition, what the best procedure was, and who would be the best doctor to perform that procedure. We also made an informed choice based on research when we discovered that our child had osteomyelitis, a bone infection of the knee. We researched and discussed best options with our child's doctor. Just as we did with other health issues, we also wanted to do some research on the efficacy of masks. Did you know that there are no long-term studies in children wearing masks all day? What about the data we do have? The most reputable medical institutions in the world, such as American Academy of Pediatrics, the Yale Child Study Center, and the National Institute of Health, state that masks negatively impact kids' health and can cause an array of issues. How do we know this? Research. This is publicly available data. The difference for our family is that before we had a choice in doing what was best for our kids' health. Now schools are making that choice for us. Administrators are quick to say, if you don't like it, go virtual. But doing that is putting kids last. Studies have shown that children fall behind in virtual settings. Putting kids in front of a laptop all day places a toll on kids, losing the emotional connection and pure communication they need to learn and grow. Schools quote recommendations from CDC for these mandates, yet they don't actually follow CDC guidelines for changing masks often, switching out moist and dirty masks. Kids are in a mask all day. The World Health Organization, the British Medical Journal, and Psychology Today all state that masks negatively impact children's physical, psychological, and neurological development. Just 3 weeks ago, the National Institute of Health declared that extended mask wearing by the general population could lead to relevant effects and consequences in many medical fields. Science Direct declared that wearing a mask increases the risk of thermoregulation, which prevents the body from maintaining its core temperature. This can cause respiratory depression, cardiac arrhythmias, impaired mental function, and muscle dysfunction. And I don't know why anyone else hasn't looked this up. Kids are now yelling at other kids to pull up their mask at school. One teacher now says that for every minute a mask is down, a kid will miss a minute of recess. My youngest child's having a hard time breathing in her mask, but won't stop running because she doesn't want to get a red penalty card. Believe me, I worry about our kids' health. You're not giving us a choice, though, to do what is right for our kids. So I'm asking you to make a better choice for all students. Please don't put kids in masks next year. You could start as early as tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Next is Jason Moore.
Oh, good evening. I'm Jason Moore. I just wanted to say thank you for letting me talk tonight. Dr. Miles, the best of luck to you in the next part of your life, the next great adventure. I want to start off with congratulating all of this year's graduating seniors. Well done. May God bless all of you in your next adventures, whether it's in college, getting on the job, enlisting in the military. You've earned it. Thank you so much for working so hard. I want to make a statement about a couple of comments that have been made about, I guess, what the events happened down at Brookdale Farms a couple weeks ago. I was one of those parents that was down there. What I saw in the news compared to what actually occurred was wildly inaccurate. What actually occurred wound up being very refreshing. I went there and I listened to both sides, which is exactly what I was looking for. I wanted to hear everything. And unfortunately, things got twisted in the media. And unfortunately, some parents have had their good character damaged. Dr. Miles, you actually contacted, I cannot remember that TikTok person, Aunt Karen or something like that, that actually was doxing parents. That was a gross miscalculation on your part to engage that woman. What she did was absolutely wrong. So I would just leave that statement here, as there will be more conversations coming along. In regards to masks, my daughter and I had a long conversation this afternoon. She's going to be graduating from Marquette High School in a couple of weeks. And she asked, and we actually talked about wearing the masks. And I said, you do not have to wear it. It's about time to stop taking the Department of Health of St. Louis County at their word. Governor Parson, we're waiting on him to actually sign SB 271, which I have actually testified in Jefferson City a couple different times, to eliminate Sam Page as the tyrant that he is in St. Louis County. As a result of this, it is time to end this mask mandate. It is not healthy for any child, any adult person really, to wear it constantly through a day. So I'm expecting her to make her own choice when the time comes on a graduation night, the most special time of her life. And if she decides she wants to take the mask off, I told her go ahead. And if you get any grief, you tell me, and I will raise hell, because the time has come to stop and put our foot down. Like the previous gentlemen have said, these are tax dollars. We raise our children, not you. You educate our children. Time to get back to business. Thank you so much. God bless.
Next patron is Amy Ryan.
Thank you so much, Board. I appreciate the time. That speaker, I had all this lined up to speak about something, and I was there. I walked into, basically, I felt a lion's den. I felt like how I feel right here, that I am one of just a couple persons of color. So I think the media accurately reported what happened on Friday. So once again, I am here to make a statement in supporting better representation in our education curriculum for our kids. After the relentless attacks to Dr. Miles, Dr. Harris, and Dr. Hogan, some are now looking to our teachers. Our teachers are incredibly resilient, but they're also human. They are feeling the pressure to even teach the basics. There are memos floating around on social media to monitor and micromanage our teachers. These memos are then fueled and gaslit by these political leaders. For what and why? This is the narrative that is being placed on our school, on our district, as either racist or constantly watched by parents and the media. Teachers do not want to come here and teach. Some are retiring early. We have lost a superintendent and we have lost Dr. Hogan. How many more? How many more need to retire before it hurts our kids and our prestigious ranking of being the best school in the state and country? But know this, there are parents that are watching on YouTube that are not here today. Majority of them want diversity and education in our schools. Majority of them support you in diversity and equity and inclusion to be implemented. Parents don't know what that is though. Let's give them the space. We ask again to fill that vacuum. That DEI is new, but this needs to be defined quickly before our leaders do at the state. We don't need a roundtable. We don't need another forum. We need parents to then give them time, to give them space to do this. Can we please stop the madness? Can we please base our concerns on truth, on what is being taught? This is our school district. Let's save it in a constructive and patient way.
Next patron is Grant Heeman.
Short and sweet. I got a kid in Rockwood. She's a senior graduating. I came up in Rockwood. I had the pleasure of going to school with Terry Harris. I think it's a damn shame to anybody who had to threaten that man. That's a great man. And they're a coward for doing it, point blank.
Final patron comment this evening is Grace Duran.
So, my name is Grace Duffin. I am sorry, I'm trying to pull up my thing. I am a sophomore at Lafayette High School, and I have attended Rockwood School District since I was 5 years old, 11 years of my life. I have been very satisfied with the curriculum and the things that I have been taught there. We have had AP classes. I've had every opportunity. I have extracurriculars, sports, anything that you can think of, early college admissions, and I am appalled by the group of concerned Rockwood parents working to actively make our schools a worse place. I attend what was previously considered one of the highest rated public schools in Missouri, despite parents working as hard as they can to change that status. And not everyone here, concerned parents of Rockwood claim that our schools are teaching propaganda. I will say this, propaganda is changing historical fact to fit your narrative simply because it makes you uncomfortable. I'm sorry that so many parents feel personally attacked by historical fact, but that's not Rockwood's problem. It is their job to teach your children diversity and equality. I'm going to pretend as if I didn't just sit here and listen to people say that masks don't work and that equality does not matter, that not everyone's equal. I think that is a dangerous philosophy, and it just doesn't quite honestly make any sense. I find it quite laughable that people have so much free time on their hands that they will sit here and critique the district to the emails that they send to their teachers, when we have had a terrible year as a district. Students have had a terrible year, children being at home, teachers have had a terrible year teaching, and I see the effects of these people's actions in my classroom. I am appalled by it, and it needs to stop. Until this situation is, I suppose, finished, or, I will be at every board meeting I can, because it is quite enraging to sit and listen to our district being made into a laughingstock in front of the nation on national news because people feel personally attacked by fact. Thank you.
Grace. Right, that brings us to Superintendent and Board comments. I'll turn it over to Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Ms. Bays. This evening, the Board of Education approved a number of new additions to our district administrative team. Dr. Emily Ortel, and if, as I call your name, if you would please stand and remain standing because I have descriptions of all of you. Dr. Emily Ortel is the new principal at Baldwin Elementary. Cody Dusenberry is the new principal of Chesterfield Elementary. Austin Koenig is the new assistant principal at Crestview Middle. Dr. Tony Lastly is the new assistant principal at Wildwood Middle. And Sally Schulte as the new district coordinator of physical education, health, and driver's education. All will begin their new positions on July 1st. Now let me tell you a little bit about each one of these outstanding leaders. Currently, Emily is assistant principal at Westridge Elementary, where she has worked since 2015. Prior to that, she was an elementary principal in Bowling Green, where she received the Exemplary New Principal Award from the Missouri Association of Elementary School Principals. Emily earned a Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education from Missouri Baptist University, a Master's of Education in Elementary Administration from William Woods University, and a Doctorate of Education in Administration from Maryville University. Cody is currently assistant principal at Stanton Elementary, where he has worked since 2018. Prior to that, he was an administrative intern in the City of St. Charles School District, where he also taught 5th grade math and science. Additionally, he has served as the Summer Academy principal at Bowles Elementary School. Cody earned a Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education from the University of Missouri-Columbia and a Master's in Educational Administration from Lindenwood University. Austin currently teaches 7th grade math at Parkway West Middle School. Prior to that, he taught for 3 years at Wentzville Middle School after beginning his teaching career at Cross Keys Middle in Florissant. He earned a Bachelor of Science in Middle School Education from Southeast Missouri State University and a Master of Arts in Educational Leadership from Maryville University. Currently, Tony is a Special Education Coordinator at Utah Valley Elementary and Rockwood Summit High School, a position he has held since 2015. Previously, he worked as a speech-language pathologist for 15 years in the Rockwood, Parkway, and Hazelwood school districts. He earned both a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Science in Communication Disorders and Sciences from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, as well as a doctorate in Educational Leadership and Administration from Maryville University, where he is currently an adjunct professor. Sally is currently the lead K-12 physical education health teacher in the Wentzville School District, where she has taught since 2010. She serves as the Secretary-Treasurer for the Missouri Society of Health and Physical Educators and was named the Missouri Elementary Physical Education Teacher of the Year in 2018 and the Society of Health and Physical Educators Central District Elementary Teacher of the Year in 2019. She earned a Bachelor of Science in K-12 Physical Education and a Master of Arts in Higher Education Athletic Administration from Southeast Missouri State University, and she is currently working on her doctorate in teacher leadership at Maryville University. All of these leaders are in attendance this evening, so please join me in congratulating them and joining or remaining with the Rockwood family. Congratulations to all of you. Continuing with announcements, the Rockwood Task Force 2021-2022 met for the 4th and final time virtually on May 10th to discuss the latest information related to the plan for next school year. The task force's goal is to ensure we are providing each Rockwood student a quality education that aligns with the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of our school community, as well as the district's mission, vision, and values in light of a global pandemic. Its work is broken down into 4 main focus areas: learning models and staffing, learning acceleration, social emotional supports, and health considerations. I'd like to thank the nearly 30 Rockwood administrators, teachers, parents, and students who devoted their time and efforts to this important work. Assistant Superintendent for Supervision of Schools, Dr. Lisa Counts, and some of her colleagues will share an update of the task force's work with us later this evening, and our community will have the opportunity to share their thoughts in the coming weeks as part of a larger community survey. So again, thanks to all those who have been part of that task force. Werther Elementary has been named a 2021 National School of Character by Character.org, making it one of only 47 schools recognized nationally and one of only 9 schools to be recognized from the state of Missouri. Werther previously earned National School of Character distinction in 2011 and was recertified in 2016 and again this year. Schools of Character demonstrate a focus on character development that has positively impacted academic achievement, student behavior, and school climate. It's truly a testament to the emphasis on character education exhibited by the school's students, staff members, parents, and the entire Werther community. Seniors John V. Haria from Marquette High School and Rohit Riali from Lafayette High School earned the distinction of joining the 57th class of United States Presidential Scholars. They are 2 of only 5 students from Missouri and 161 students from across the country recognized for their accomplishments in academics, the arts, and career and technical education fields. Of the 3.6 million students expected to graduate from high school this year, only 0.04% earned this honor. That's some pretty complex math right there. This is the 4th straight year that a Rockwood student has been included among the Presidential Scholars, and the first time since at least 2003 that 2 Rockwood students have been in the same class. Congratulations, Johnvi and Rohit. We are so proud of your accomplishments and excited to see what the next chapter holds for you. A round of applause for these 2 fine scholars. Finally tonight, I'd like to bring your attention to a special event held at Fairway Elementary School recently. Brooke Hierholzer, a student teacher there, could not attend an in-person graduation ceremony for her master's degree due to COVID-19 restrictions. So, her colleagues at Fairway decided to throw a surprise ceremony for her at the school that included Fairway students, staff members, and Brooke's family. Let's watch.
Our first grade student teacher is graduating with her master's, and thanks to COVID changes and everything, she is not able to attend the ceremony tomorrow night. So we decided we would have a whole ceremony for her here at Fairway.
Will all graduates please stand? It is now time to receive your diploma. Keep walking. Congratulations, and Miss H, you may turn your tassel.
I was overwhelmed with joy and just gratitude, and I'm like choking up again because I don't think that anyone has ever done this for me. Like, it's probably the nicest thing that it is. So, yeah, but yeah, I think it's the nicest thing that could have happened, and I'm so blessed. So.
Yay, Mrs. H!
Don't think I've seen a graduation ceremony quite like that, but I can tell you that graduation ceremony was filled with a lot of love, kindness, and compassion. We're looking in the days ahead at the same sort of love, kindness, and compassion of 4 additional graduation ceremonies of our own. That is all I have this evening.
Just want to remind everybody that tomorrow night is the Rockwood Relay for Life here in the district, and tomorrow is Wear Purple, the Power of Purple Day. Please go out and enjoy it's going to look different this year, but do enjoy the luminary ceremony at 8:30.
A few weeks ago, I want to give a shout out to the 13 student athletes of Eureka High School that had a brief ceremony honoring their decision to continue their sports career in college, including my daughter for rowing. Also, I want to give kudos to the prom committee at Eureka and their successful prom this year. They decorated the courtyard, and everyone that attended had a great time. It was nice to see a high school tradition take place in a very non-traditional year. And then also I want to thank Utah Valley for their hospitality during reading week last week. I had fun reading to the kids.
Comments?
I just want to also thank Utah Valley for the opportunity to read to the kids. It was the first time I had been in a school in a long time, and it was very joyous. The kids were great. I overstayed. I stayed too long. So, not too long for me, too long for their schedule.
Anyone else? I want to take just a minute to acknowledge a couple of things. We have received a number of emails and letters, both signed and anonymously over the past year. But I want to speak about sort of the amount that we've received lately, and I know we've been very public and transparent in our discussions about our COPE committee and about our communication processes leading up to change in April, and I just want to reaffirm that the process that had been decided upon is that the board president would be the person to be responding to emails. There are times when, due to the quantity of the emails, that the emails may not be receiving a response. And I just also wanted to clarify that if there's times when Dr. Miles or other cabinet members or employees of the district are on those emails, typically we view it as the employees of the district, they are the ones who will be doing the responding. And so just want the patrons at home to know that if they're receiving responses from Dr. Miles but not from board members, that's why, because it's important for us to follow this process. And I want you all to know that every single word that you are sending us is read by each of us. We are a very caring and committed board, and we spend a great deal of time reading all of those things. And including, I want to acknowledge the student letters that I've received lately in the mail from some kids at Rockwood South who I think that normally we would be in schools, and I enjoy going in and hearing their debates, and so I think they have taken the time to write those debates in a written form and send them to us. So I don't know if you've all also received those in the mail, but mine have been about homework, so I will be sure to pass those along to each of you so you can read both sides of the issue and see what you think. So Rockwood South students, we're reading your letters. Anonymous people who are sending us things, we're reading your letters. And to those of you signing your names, we're reading yours as well. So thank you all for sharing your thoughts with us and for your continued patience, grace, and kindness as we continue to move through the last few days of the school year. So, moving into our meeting, could I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda items as submitted?
Move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, we have two great donations tonight. Looks like both of those are from the Rockwood Summit area. Falcon football boosters. They come through, it seems like, at least once a month. This time is monetary, $11,215 to cover Falcon performance costs and purchases. And then the second one is from Brad Sevcik, monetary $1,000 to fund the Rockwood Summit High School activity account. And that's from the Leanne Falsetti Sevcik Memorial Scholarship Fund. Mr. Sevcik donated a check for $1,000 to help fund the Leanne Falsetti Memorial Scholarship Fund at Rockwood Summit High School. Leanne was a longtime foreign language teacher at Rockwood Summit. I think she was at another school before, but I can't remember which one it was. Where? She was at Lafayette before that. That's where I knew her, I think.
Those are good ones. Any other discussion? So the motion is to approve the consent agenda items as submitted. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
That passes. And next, could I get a motion to approve the bond issue purchases and related contracts, $7,500 to $150,000 as submitted?
Moved.
Motion and a second, and I think Mike Schneider and Deb Kettering are both coming up for these. Hi.
This is for the purchase and installation of the roller shades in the glass vestibule entry at the new Eureka High School STEM edition to help control the interior temperature. There's a receptionist out there, and certain times of the year it gets really hot, and this will enable us to keep the temperature down and keep it more easy for her and everyone else to use that part of the building. So, I just wanted to point out our staff is going to do all the electric work. This is just for the roller shades purchase and installation, and Rockwood will take it from there.
Is that the new entrance to the high school? Is that
Yes,
where they say?
yes, yeah. It's just when you come in the front door, it's that first vestibule where the receptionist is sitting.
Other questions about that? Thank you. Deb, you wanna?
Evening.
This is for Kansas City Audiovisual. It is for audio enhancement Sentinel Systems, which are the sound amplification systems found in all of our elementary schools. They are typically used for, this purchase is typically used to replace systems that have aged out and are no longer functional. We are at a point with some of our systems where we cannot obtain any replacement parts, so we have to purchase new systems for those, and that's to cover those.
This estimate that's going to happen about every year, or is it going to be greater next year or less, or do we know?
We typically budget $120,000. We haven't spent that amount, but like I said, some of these have been in place since 2007, and they've really reached their end of life, so we're preparing.
Did you say elementary, or it says district-wide?
It does say district-wide. They're primarily at the elementary schools. We do have some in a few locations at secondary schools, but back in 2005, 6, and 7, we made a concerted effort to get them in the elementary schools because of the research that showed that the sound amplification systems really helped with younger learners.
So take care of the broken ones for this year. All of them? All of them?
No, we just replaced on failure.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? So the motion is to approve the bond issue purchases and related contracts, $7,500 to $150,000 as submitted. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That passes. Sorry, I didn't even ask, is anyone opposed? I've been skipping that. Okay, we're good. Next, Deb, you're sticking around. We have two motions for the 8.02. The first is a motion to approve the bond issue purchases and related contracts over $150,000 from Apple Inc. for the purchase of iPads and peripherals.
Move.
Yep. Motion and a second.
This is just a request to allow us to continue to purchase iPads as we need them. We don't have a need at this moment to purchase more elementary iPads, but we do have a lot of requests from other curricular areas at times. We've had requests from PTOs to purchase, and we are required to purchase through the Apple contract.
Fields or screens?
Peripherals are things like the Apple Pen, cases, keyboards.
All that stuff?
All that stuff.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so the motion is to approve the bond issue purchases and related contracts over $150,000 from Apple Inc. for purchase of iPads and peripherals. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That passes. The second is, could I please have a motion to approve the bond issue purchases and related contracts over $150,000 from Dell Computer Corporation for purchase of computers and peripherals?
Move.
Motion and a second.
This is our request to purchase computers for next school year throughout the year. This is part of our annual refresh. We have a 4-year cycle on laptops and 5 to 6 year cycle on desktop computers. So every year we're refreshing a portion of our devices.
How many more years on that 2017 bond issue can we fund that $1.5 million?
We're trying to make it to 2023.
To 2023?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so the motion is to approve the bond issue purchases and related contracts over $150,000 from Dell Computer Corporation for purchase of computers and peripherals. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And that passes. And next we have almost the entire room coming up, I believe. So I'm first going to invite, let me see where my list went here. Lisa Scroggs up, who's the Missouri DESE Director of Comprehensive Literacy State Development, and I will let you bring the others forward as you're ready. Welcome.
Sure, thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here this evening on behalf of the department to recognize 2 schools from the Rockwood District that have been named as exemplary library programs. While I'm speaking, if everyone who's here to receive the awards could come on up to the front. This particular recognition from the department has a very rigorous set of criteria, and the application process is rigorous as well. We had over 60 schools in the state begin the application process this school year. Only 20 schools in the state managed to complete the application process. And from among those 20 schools, only 7 schools in the state of Missouri were recognized as having exemplary library programs. 2 of those 7 from the Rockwood School District. So it's my pleasure this evening to present resolutions from the Missouri State Board of Education, the Missouri Senate, and the Missouri House of Representatives to recognize the work that these programs have done and what they've accomplished. First of all, Lafayette High School, under the direction of librarians Nikki Ballard-Long and Jane Lingefelter, along with library assistant Robin Van Iwarden and head principal Dr. Karen Calcaterra. Much lighter, okay. And from Rockwood Summit High School, under the direction of librarians Greg Baum and Margaret Sullivan, library assistants Jessica Hausman and Dora Brewington, and head principal Dr. Emily McCown. This has been a challenging year. I don't think anyone else needs to say that. We already know that. And at the department, we greatly appreciate the work that the teachers, the communities have done to make our schools work this year for our students, for their education. Thanks to all of you for what you do.
Thank you. That's awesome work. And next up, we have a professional development segment, which will be our legislative update with Ed Plus Executive Director, Dr. Paul Ziegler. Welcome.
Evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. I think a year ago we were virtual doing this, so it's kind of nice to be out and about today. So this year, the legislative session, it was interesting. It obviously, with COVID restrictions, kind of started off with some stops, you would almost say, as the COVID would hit different parts of the legislature, both Senate and the House, and they had some pauses. But one thing that became abundantly clear early on was that education was going to be a focus. To give you an idea, I can tell you there was a day in February I was there, and I was still in the Senate chambers at 2 a.m. And what I can tell you is my mom said, as one of 3 boys, nothing good happens after midnight. And she was right. And that goes for legislation too. Nobody does their best work at midnight, and it's after midnight, and it's a shame that we are in a situation where sometimes that's where we end up. So with that said, all of the kind of fever around school reform early on took a pause halfway through, and ultimately we really only had one big bill that passed at the end. And part of that really is to do with the inability for the 2 chambers to develop a working relationship. We see that periodically, not just in education reform, but in other issues, where there tends to be not always the best communication or the best coordination of efforts between the 2 houses, even with the supermajority. So ultimately, when we started the year, the hot topics were the same as they've been many years. For the governor, workforce development, and also preschool access, which is something we should all be really excited about, because preschool access, we know that the dollars we spend there really end up generating excellent return for their value. Legislative issues, property taxes, charter school, both expansion and funding. Prescriptive reading bills to tell our teachers how they need to teach reading. I think our reading teachers should be able to do that. ESA and voucher bills, and then open enrollment were really the big legislative issues. And from a funding perspective, we wanted to watch the funding formula, transportation funding, and the Wayfare fix. And I'll talk about this more later, but for people that don't know it, essentially that's an online sales tax. Missouri is one of 2 states that wasn't collecting online sales tax. So that was a big priority for as we entered legislative session this year. What passed? The big bill that passed was House Bill 349. That was sponsored by Representative Christopher Finelli out of St. Peter's. Essentially, it's a scholarship tax credit voucher program. It's a mouthful. But essentially what it is, it's a scholarship that allows individuals to take money and go to a private school. The reason we do it under a scholarship tax credit plan is because state of Missouri wouldn't allow us to give general revenue directly to a private school. So what we do instead is set up a education scholarship account. Then people fund that account and are given a tax credit in the corresponding amount to what they funded. So originally that was set up to be a $50 million program next year, or actually 2 years from now. It will start next year with the ESAs, but then actually go into effect the following year with a $75 million cap. Later in the session, Senate Bill 86 passed, and there were some other provisions that lowered that to $25 million and $50 million cap. What it does is it sets up education assistant organizations that will administer that program and offer out these scholarships. It was designed originally as it came out for students with special needs, as well as students that come from impoverished backgrounds. Through different negotiations, they actually set that still for students with special needs, students from impoverished background, but they did set that as high as 2 times the federal limit for free and reduced lunch, which means for a family of 4, it's over $90,000 that a family of 4 can bring in and qualify. The devil's always in the details as we look at these ESA agencies next year, or as they develop and then start to grant scholarships. Really, it's going to be how do they administer it. If they administer it and it goes to students with special needs and our most impoverished students first, obviously that's the way they're designed, but we'll have to see how that comes out. Other bills that passed, Senate Bill 153, that was the omnibus tax bill. And by omnibus, I mean they just take a lot of tax things, put it into one bill, and instead of passing multiple bills, they pass one large bill. It did have the Wayfare fix. That Wayfare fix, as I mentioned earlier, we are only one of 2 states that weren't collecting online sales tax for those companies that don't have a nexus in Missouri. So when I say a nexus in Missouri, we were collecting sales tax, or the stores were collecting sales tax for like Target, Bed Bath & Beyond, Walmart. Folks that have a presence in Missouri, when they'd sell online, they were collecting tax. But for those that did not have a presence, and oftentimes that's why it was referred to as the Wayfare fix, is they were not collecting taxes in states where they didn't have a distribution site or some other physical presence. So many states, as they realized that online shopping was here to stay, began to tax those through efforts through legislation. Missouri paused to do that. Like I said, we were one of only 2 left that weren't, and because that's really the desire not to pass on tax increase to our public, and that was viewed as a tax increase because we're now collecting sales tax. Although not collecting that sales tax, I will be honest with you, was a disadvantage to our own Missouri own Missouri stores and departments. I heard a testimony at a tax hearing once here in St. Louis. A gentleman from St. Genevieve that runs the lumber mill there says, I can't compete when Illinois can sell lumber with no sales tax and drive it across the bridge. So I'm glad that this legislative fix happened because it really puts our Missouri businesses on the same footing as businesses outside Missouri. In response to the Wayfare tax, however, they did pass an income tax reduction that will kick in with certain revenue triggers. That will be an additional 0.3% reductions in our overall state income tax rates. Currently, that rate could be at 5.4% because of other legislation that allows 0.1% reductions. With those additional 0.1% reductions, we would be able to go to a 4.8% overall Missouri general income tax rate. Each one of those 0.1% reductions for Missouri means about $105 million. The other thing they did was increase the standard federal deduction that's applied then to our Missouri income tax from to $4,000 for a single and to $8,000 for married filing jointly. altogether, when these roll in, that's about $452 million of general revenue that we'll be displacing or no longer collecting. So what's troubling about that is we know that currently our schools are funded typically towards the bottom of the 50 states. Typically, I've heard anywhere from 45 to 49. If we don't bring in additional revenue, obviously it's hard to increase our position from being at the bottom. Other things that passed, Representative Kelly had a protection of children bill that had to do with some foster care and some other pieces. And onto that, they did add some educational reform or educational bills. In particular, the language from House Bill 228 will allow parents to tape record IEP and 504 meetings. There were some districts that weren't allowing that. They can do that now, and they only have to provide 24 hours notice to the school if they're going to do that. Other things, seclusion and restraint. There's been a lot of that in the media over the years. Essentially what it did is put some parameters that it's only in cases of imminent physical harm to themselves or others. And then there's some required observation and written reports that are required if we do use seclusion or restraint. Underlying bill on that was House Bill 387. And then lastly, DESE is going to be required to develop a model policy to allow for breastfeeding in our schools. They need to come up with that by January 1st of 2022. And then next year around this time, school districts will be implementing or adopting a policy that will fit that. And that underlying language came from Senate Bill 76. The other one that passed, I mentioned earlier that we did change some parameters through Senate Bill 86 on the tuition tax credit voucher system. Essentially, Senate Bill 86 actually had more to do with public funds for political purposes. And essentially, it put some teeth in the law. If school districts, unfortunately, we probably have had some bad actors around the state, is my understanding, that have maybe used some public funds to try to support bond issues, candidates, or other things, instead of just providing information. Now, if you violate that statute, it is considered a Class 4 election offense, which is a Class A misdemeanor that could have 1 year in jail or up to a $2,500 fine. What's important to note, though, it does not prohibit school districts from providing factual information about ballot initiatives. So if you go out for a ballot or for a bond issue and it's going to put a new roof on Lafayette High School, you can still say that. You can still publish that information and provide that to your public. But what it doesn't say is, you can't say our new roof is going to be the best roof ever, and if you don't support it, you're a fool. You can't go that way, but what you can do is provide the information about it. So I ran through that pretty quick. Is there any questions? There's probably some other provisions in some bills that would filter through that may have a indirect impact on schools, obviously. There's a lot of legislation that gets passed, especially towards the end, but those were the major ones. Yes, sir.
A couple of questions. On the vouchers, it's appreciative that they got it down from 50 million to 25 million, but isn't the big concern is who they're going to select to administer that? Because if they select this one group, there's no guarantee they're going to give it to the students with the free and reduced lunch or the special ed students. Is that right?
Well, you would hope that there'll be some parameters that are laid out that try to specify how those scholarships will be given out. And that's kind of that devil's in the details. There's going to be 10 of those agencies throughout the state. No more than 6 can be in the major metropolitan areas. So Kansas City, St. Louis, Springfield, and Columbia can have no more than 6. It's really going to be who do they find to administer those and how do they go about it. My understanding is those organizations can keep up to 10%, I believe was the number. So you figure if we have a $25 million allotment, there's going to be $2.5 million out there to operate these education scholarship agencies. Again, if we get the right people, I'm not a fan of vouchers. I don't know that they have a history of showing really strong results. But if we have the right people in those places, maybe the dollars will make their way into the right hands. But again, until we know who those agencies are and how they operate, it'll be hard to say.
The problem in other states has been they've had vouchers, but they, for some reason, go to the people that have a lot of wealth, which don't need them in some states. I'm not worried about that, but I am worried about who's going to administer that, and you've answered that. The second one, the one about the breastfeeding, aren't they proposing allowing that 3 times a day? Was that part of it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, which, I
So
mean-
up to 3 times a day, and there's some other provisions, secluded space with a sink.
Yeah.
So most of our schools, I'll be honest, in the St. Louis metropolitan area were probably already allowing teachers that, coming back after pregnancy, that
Oh, yeah.
opportunity. But if they weren't, certainly they're not going to be real onerous provisions. Most of our nurses' stations or other places will be able to provide that kind of a secluded spot with a sink and privacy.
Would you say overall it was contentious throughout it, but it ended up being a pretty quiet year on what they passed, wasn't it?
Absolutely, and part of that, like I said, I was surprised. And to give you an example, there were some procedural mistakes, as I shared. I was in the Senate very late one night. And again, our best work isn't after midnight. And procedural mistakes were made, and that probably stalled some bills and caused some things, which was good for us in a lot of ways because some of the bills were very damaging to public education. But again, I think it shows their inability to work together, and because of that, we were probably spared on some of the legislation that could have been very hurtful.
As a result of those late sessions, or that late session, we haven't really seen all the bills that have been passed. Is that right, or did they all come out finally?
I think they're all out. Obviously, the governor hasn't signed everything. I don't anticipate him not signing any of the bills that are here. I would anticipate him signing. They're out as far as, they're part of the record, but sifting through it sometimes and the unintended consequences, some that comes to mind is a couple years ago there was a bill passed late on some tax reform, and it ended up taking away the financial institution tax, which was very damaging to St. Louis County. That's been fixed since. But again, it was an unintended consequence, and we always have to go through bills and see what happens that way to understand.
One last bill that could affect probably transportation more than education is the gas tax. Does all that money go straight to infrastructure, or does some of that come to education?
So that would all go straight to the infrastructure, the gas sales tax.
That's up to 12.5% over 5 years, is it?
Yes, so it'll go in increments of 2.5 cents for each of the next 5 years.
Paul?
Any other questions? Thanks for the opportunity. Like I said, I'm kind of a legislative nerd. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, are you concerned? Since I've been on the board, that voucher, bill has been proposed, I feel like, every year, and it's failed. Are you concerned now that it's passed, that let's say next year, now that we've got enough legislators who will maybe alter that in a different fashion? What's your kind of take on that?
So the common wisdom has always been with legislation, it's harder to pass a bill initially than it is to modify. Modifying a bill, we've already got it, this bill is just, you're familiar with it from last year, so we just want to raise that because it's been subscribed to so much. That is always a concern. Like I said, I think the ESA portion of it, it'll be at least another year before it resurfaces because they gotta get the plan out and rolling. But I do get worried about some of the other provisions that are out there that could come back next year. The reading bill in particular, I think we have wonderful reading teachers across the region that really know how to provide reading instruction well. Some of the bills tend to really want to prescribe what type of reading program they use, and I just don't think that's our best path forward. I think using our professionals who have been trained to be reading teachers is our best path forward to know how best to teach kids. So I get worried about those bills as well.
So thank you.
We still have a real strong presence of one particular party in the legislature, and they pretty well dominate what they want, don't they?
Yes, in no doubt there's a supermajority, but they really haven't had a cohesive plan on some of these, and sometimes even fighting about what provisions they want or what's the most important reform that they might want has caused some things to stall as well.
But it keeps up that way.
Mr. Ziegler, before you leave, I just want to commend you for your leadership throughout the region. I know you do much more than legislative updates. I think we've seen each other for about 70 weeks straight, but this is the first time we've seen each other in person in that time. The work that you have done to coordinate responses to COVID-19 with professional development, you have been such a unifier, and just want to thank you personally and professionally for your partnership and your work with our district and districts throughout not only St. Louis County, but beyond. So thank you.
Appreciate it, and it is nice to see you, my friend. Take good care.
Thank you, Dr.
Paul.
Ziegler. And next, we have some additional information, the proposed FY22 proposed budget update. Paul Northington and Dan Steinbergy.
Yes, good evening. Yeah, we're back. We last spoke to you in February, so this is an update to the February presentation. And really want to start off saying what a difference a year makes. You know, when we were back here with you last May was when things were starting to shut down. We were getting some word from the state that some funding was going to be cut. And I think the word that we used last year was there's a lot of uncertainty in these numbers because we really just didn't know what was going to happen going forward. So I think at this juncture, we've gotten through that a lot better than we thought, and Dan will share some of those numbers with you in a minute. So we certainly have some good news to give you both for this year and the outlook for next year. So I think the word uncertainty has changed to maybe more clarity. I think we have some more or better visibility about where we're headed going forward. So just to kind of give you a quick timeline, you've seen this before. Our budget process starts in the fall, working with our various department and team leaders throughout the district to start the budgeting process. We gave you an update in February. Tonight is really just a preview of what you're going to see with our formal budget adoption that we'll bring to you at the June 24th meeting. I don't really think much has changed between now and then. I think we're at a pretty good place as far as the where we see our budget going forward. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Dan to let him speak to some of the numbers, and then I'll jump in on the back end.
Good evening. We have a couple slides just to kind of summarize what we presented back in February and where we are today. You'll see very little changes has happened in the last couple of months. And the first column is the current year projection, which we've been sharing with you on a monthly basis throughout the course of the school year. So again, revenue has changed very little since February. Just a reminder for 21-22. A couple of our major revenue items. It is a reassessment year this year, so we'll be getting final numbers from the county in August, September, and we'll be coming with the tax rate in September. CPI rate has been reduced to 1.4%, so whatever growth we will see will be capped with that, just and then run everything through the state auditor's form. From a state perspective, we're showing everything fully funded for next year. And then also we have Prop C, which was also kind of one of the question marks that we're kind of going into this school year. Obviously the economy has been very strong, and we're continuing to see Prop C, the sales tax numbers come in very strong. So those are our three major revenue sources for next year. From an expenditure standpoint, again, very little change since our February preliminary budget that we provided you. Made some minor adjustments over the last couple of months with some of the decisions that have been made from a salary standpoint on our assumptions. And then again, overall for this school year, we did adopt a deficit budget based off of some of the factors at the state level from a revenue standpoint. Those have reversed, and we are going to be able to project out a increase to our fund balance. And then we are proposing a balanced budget that will come in the June meeting, as Paul mentioned, for next year. So all good things related to that. And just a couple of overall financial recaps as we kind of navigated through this past year. Again, this time last year, the state had cut state revenue 5%. So instead of being 100% allocated, we started the year at 95%. That was reversed in March when the governor released general funds based off of state collections. Prop C also has rebounded from where we were forecasting a year ago, so we've been able to achieve higher Prop C numbers than we originally were looking at. So those two combined, we were able to add $3 million to our revenue. So originally, money that was cut was able to be funded back through the district, and we were able to pick up $3 million in revenue. Local tax collections, again, that's going to be something we'll just monitor over the next couple of years. That's something we've been kind of talking about the last couple of times we've met with you. Just what's the outcome going to be of the past year of business closures, mainly commercial. Residential is very strong. We're seeing that in our preliminary numbers, but it's really going to be the outcome of the commercial side, and then also what happens with settlements on taxpayers that have protested any kind of increase in their assessed valuation. So we are looking at matching our budgeted collection rate of 97% from a collection standpoint. So for this year, we're able to achieve that. From our self-supporting side, though, unfortunately, they still have some hurdles to kind of come through. So these are our programs that are self-supported, and our three major programs: child nutrition, community education, and our preschool program. Will be dipping into the reserves in order to cover their current year decreases in their fund balance. So that each of the programs, each individually, have encountered different situations where they had to overcome from just an enrollment standpoint. From the child nutrition standpoint, all the school meals are being provided through federal dollars, free to our students, but they're also being impacted from a revenue standpoint by not being able to sell a la carte items, things through the line, things like that. And then of course, community education has been really driven obviously by our programs, and as programs are opening up, enrollment's starting to kind of get back to our pre-COVID levels. They're going to start kind of seeing a rebound on that as well. So overall, from an operating standpoint for this year, we do expect to have, as I mentioned, kind of an increase to our fund balance. We will dip into our reserves on our non-operating side of it again. So overall, from a district fund balance standpoint, we'll have an approximate 1.3 million decrease in our fund balance. So the increase we're seeing in the operating side is, from a total standpoint, is offsetting some of the decreases we're seeing, excuse me, in the self-supporting sides. And then again, we'll bring forward a balanced budget at our June meeting with the full budget document. So I'm going to turn it back to Paul for a couple of updates on that.
Thank you, Dan. So Dan spoke basically to the operating self-supporting funds, and just to kind of footnote our debt service and bond issue fund accounts, I just really want to address those briefly. Our debt service fund has had a tax rate of 68 cents for many, many years. That current levy is sufficient to cover our principal and interest obligations going forward, so there's no change there. And the good news on that is the transition of our debt service levy looks like we can move that forward a couple of years. I know that was a question that you had for Deb Kettering in regards to cycle maintenance for technology. If you recall, several years ago, a plan was put together to where we was going to move that levy in the 25-26 school year, and it looks like now we're in a position to move that up by 2 years to 23 and 24. And that'll be part of the discussion that we have with you in more detail when we have our June work session. But the numbers there look pretty positive that we're in a position to go ahead and make that transition and pick up for cycle maintenance needs that go beyond the 2023 time frame that Deb will need in technology and Chris will need in facilities. So that timing is working out really well. As far as bond issue funds, we're nearing the end of our construction projects related to the 2017 bond issue. If you recall, we just completed Wildwood Middle School and opened it up around spring break. It was a very good, nice addition. That was a gymnasium, multi-purpose room that also serves as a storm safe shelter. Turned out really nice. And our last project will be the final phase of our STEM addition at Marquette High School. So what's remaining with the 2017 bond issue will basically be our cycle maintenance needs and facilities, which we will be allocating about $2.4 million a year through 2023 and about $3 million for technology. Also want to note that we do have a refunding opportunity. We have some bonds that are callable in February of 22, so we'll be working with our financial experts to do that refunding, assuming interest rates stay at the current levels, which it looks like they probably are. It doesn't look like we're going to see much change in interest rates in the near term. And if that's the case, we'll have the ability to refund about $16 million in bonds at a lower interest rate. So we hope to take advantage of that. As far as the CARES COVID funding update, the district has received some dollars up to this point. We've been very strategic about how we've allocated those funds to address the COVID needs. What we have coming up are second and third round of ESSER funds. You'll note there at the middle of the screen, ESSER 2 has a $3.5 million allocation and provides funding up through October of 2023. And there's also another allocation coming. We haven't received the exact amount, but it's estimated that it's going to be around $7.9 million. And the timetable on that extends out one additional year to 2024. So what we're doing to prepare strategically for that is we're visiting with our cabinet and our departments to really put together a list of things to address COVID, whether it be in the curriculum side or facility side, technology, etc., and have a strategic plan of how we use those funds and make sure we match it up not only with the dollars but with the time frame as well. So we're right in the middle of that process. We've had a couple of meetings, got our list started, and it's really a budget within a budget, so we'll basically handle it the same way that we handle our school budget. We'll put the list together, we'll prioritize it, and come back with a well-defined plan. In financial summary, Dan kind of alluded to it. Fiscal 21 will end with a positive growth in fund balance, which means we're going to have an operating budget surplus. So the budget that we brought to you in June with a $2.5 million deficit has been turned into a surplus at this point of about $1.6 million. So if you'd have told me last year we would have got back to zero, I'd have been ecstatic. So it's really great news. And also, some of that's been a result of additional revenues, but it also goes back to our departments being very diligent in watching their expenditures. And when I say that, the curriculum instruction, HR, facilities, transportation have all done a good job of controlling and managing their expenses. So hats off to them. Fiscal 22, as Dan alluded to, we have a balanced budget, and we have we feel a lot better about the numbers this year than we did last year. So I think we got some good clarity there and pretty optimistic that that's attainable. Our goals haven't changed. The second bullet point, we're still focusing on a balanced budget and maintaining our AAA rating, one of 4 school districts in the state. And things to monitor going forward basically will be our local economy, a tax base. We've got some preliminary numbers on tax base right now. They seem promising. Things we'll really pay close attention to is our commercial property values. Residential seems to be pretty solid. State legislation, as Paul Ziegler alluded to, there's things that we're going to need to keep an eye on to see how it may impact funding for all school districts in the state. And then we'll also be monitoring enrollment and the impact as we come back this fall, because naturally school enrollment impacts not only funding, but it also impacts staffing and facility needs. So those are things that we're going to be keeping an eye on. And at that, I'll leave it for any questions you may have.
Well, what is ESSER funding? What is that? ESSER?
It's elementary and secondary education emergency relief funds, and the ARP in front of that other one is the American Rescue Plan. So there's a lot of acronyms in some of these funding mechanisms. Difficult to keep up with.
How do they determine how that's divvied out? Through grants?
A lot of it's based on your demographics in your school district, and a lot of these funding through the CARES funding has been tied to your Title I allocations and the proportionate funding through that. So a lot of it deals with demographics of your school district.
We're still one of the only 4 AAA rated school districts in the state for bonding,
Sure.
right? For
Sure.
funding?
500 plus school districts. We're one of 4 that have a AAA bond rating. There's less than 90 across the whole nation.
You know who the other three in Missouri are?
Parkway, Clayton, and Ladue, I believe.
Okay.
But
Tall cotton, as they say in
Yeah.
Sikeston, isn't it?
that's exactly right.
Well, your the last full bullet point about student enrollment and classroom impact. In June, will you be able to give us some firm numbers on those or some projection for next year?
Yes, as far as financial numbers, yes, June, again, I think we're very close. What we've given you tonight, I don't really see changing much between now and June. We've Dan and his team have been compiling the data since we provided you that update in February. We have some real good visibility from the state as far as funding levels there. That's been taken into consideration, and we've gotten some additional clarity at the local level in regarding property values and tax rates. You know, we
About like how this scholarship funding, will that affect us in any way in terms of our enrollment and projected numbers?
we'll just have to see what enrollment looks like when we come back this fall. So it's something that we're
Know that till later.
yeah, and we're looking at some of the preliminary numbers right now. We don't anticipate anything drastic. So, but you know, it's certainly something we'll watch as we see student enrollment. You know, we've done some pre-enrollment up to this point, but what do we actually see when we open the doors in August? So we always update projections after we get our official September count, and that provides us clarity, a lot more clarity at that point.
To date any losses that we enroll.
I mean, yeah, as we get additional information on anything, we always have to adapt and make changes. So the budget is a living, breathing document. Just because we adopt it in June, you know, we continually amend it and make changes to it throughout the year. So really the budget's not complete till you complete the school year. So naturally we have to make adjustments as circumstances change. And enrollment would certainly be part of that.
The ERSER funds and the American Recovery Program funds, are there certain buckets that money is in where it needs to be spent or regular? How?
Question, there's certain things that the allowable uses are for.
Right.
Out of the one, there is a stipulation that 20% of that has to be used within the curriculum side to address educational needs as a result of COVID. But some other things that are allowable uses is COVID preparedness and response in regards to supplies and materials, COVID training and PD, things related to that, any mental health type issues, facility upgrades that are necessary. A lot of that has to do with air quality and things of that nature, and some of that we're already started. Also summer learning and any supplemental after-school programs, and then technology. So there's a wide range of opportunities for use of those funds. So that's why we're including all the departments within the district.
I did hear you say there's funds for mental health.
Funding for what?
For mental health?
Yes, mental health is one of the allowable uses for that. So yeah, it'll be part of that structure. Great questions.
Is the 2.4 and the $3 million amounts that you mentioned for cycle maintenance and technology typical of our spending over the last however many years? Is that just typical numbers, or is this going to be like what's left?
That's been what we've been spending for the last couple of years. When you look at it long term, those numbers need to be higher, and that really is what the purpose of the debt service transition is to get those funding levels where they need to be. 2.4 million for facilities sounds like a lot, but when you have 30 plus buildings and all the square footage involved with it, that number needs to be larger than 2.4 million to maintain our facilities. So that's what the transition will do. We'll accommodate that. And on the same token, 3 million is not enough for technology either. But we're in a good place right now.
Where's that extra funding going to come from?
Excuse me?
Where's that extra funding going to come from?
We'll be transitioning the debt service levy into our capital funds levy, so they'll have extra pennies in capital funds. So it'll be coming from local property taxes. It's just reallocating out of debt service. It's net neutral on tax rate.
Somewhere down the road, with our schools aging and so forth and so on, we're probably going to have to run another bond issue somewhere, maybe?
That's a possibility. You know, as demographics change and enrollment goes up, there may be opportunities to where we have to do some additions at buildings and or maybe construct a new building if we continue to have new subdivisions come in. So there's certainly still going to be a need for bond issue for special projects like that. Yes, sir.
We don't really have any money left in this that 2017 bond issue to cover those major things. Now, those are just for cycle maintenance and so forth,
That's
right?
what we have left. It's just for cycle maintenance. Yes, sir. We've fulfilled all our obligations under the special projects.
Where you've identified several projects we could do if we had some other funding, right?
So we were able to do some other things beyond the scope. The fact that some of our projects came in under budget.
Yeah.
You know, the tennis courts is a good example of that. That wasn't in our original scope, but the fact that we came in well under budget on many projects allowed us to do some things above and beyond.
Thank you, sir.
For navigating us through this unprecedented year.
Excuse me?
Thank you for navigating us through the financial challenges of this year.
Welcome. I got a great team. It's fun.
Thank you, Paul and Dan.
Thank you.
Next, we have a Task Force 2122 update with Dr. Lisa Counts and Dr. Shelley Willett.
Good evening. I'm going to let Shelley stay there, and so she doesn't have to linger back here. This is going to be really fast, so because again, Dr. Miles stole my thunder, and my whole presentation was in his report. So,
The hell.
but I will put it here for the public. So, we have been working with a group of folks around the district: parents, students, teachers, administrators. And the purpose, let me just kind of backtrack a little bit. Dr. Miles had asked for us to look at what learning might need to look like kind of post-pandemic. Certainly we know we are not out of a COVID world yet, but excuse me, as we know, some things are rapidly changing and opening up for next year a little bit. So this started back in February. And the whole purpose was really to make sure that we were carrying out our strategic plan of the way forward and making sure that we were still keeping focus on our mission and vision while also considering all of those safety parameters and coming out of some of those pandemic structures. So that was just the purpose. So we set these goals and parameters. You've seen these before. I shared these with you at the first update. These have not changed. We wanted to consider our instructional platform, so we wanted to be cognizant of in-person and online learning. We wanted to make sure our coursework matched an in-person environment and also an online environment. It was very important for us to make sure that our teachers were primarily working in one instructional model. That was a big goal of this work, because we know that the concurrent teaching this year with teachers teaching online learners and in-person learners at the same time was very challenging for sometimes students and certainly challenging for teachers. So we wanted to review all of those learning models at elementary, middle, and high, and then of course we always want to be fiscally responsible. And as you pointed out, Lynn, we've been faced with, some challenges that have never been before us because of the pandemic, and so we knew there may be some other considerations that we needed to look at due to pandemic requirements, but we of course wanted to be fiscally responsible about that. So as we got going in our work, we were really able to hone down our areas of focus. So we were able to look at our learning models and staffing. So we got to a place where we could look at online learning and in-person learning and how we would staff each of those models. Another big area of focus was learning acceleration, and that really is, Shelley's talked with us, and I think she's presented this to you before, really looking at those essential course outcomes in the current grade level setting, not just a remedial or pull-out situation, but really addressing any of those unfinished learnings or things that haven't been mastered yet through the grade level content versus a remediation. And while there will be remedial supports in place going forward, we also are I know the curriculum department is putting things in place so that that mastery can happen as students are still progressing through grade levels. So any of those concerns about gaps, I know Shelley had done a presentation a while back showing that our STAR scores are really showing that kids are still making progress, but that we will continue that learning acceleration model. Social and emotional supports was another area of focus that we wanted to be especially thoughtful about coming out of a year of the pandemic. So Dr. Terry Harris has been working with several local agencies, expanding our partnerships and securing some new partnerships. Some expanded things he's talked about is the work with the CHADS Coalition and other agencies that support mental health awareness, suicide awareness, and support for students and families, and really expanding those partnerships to make it a more community-focused program than just focusing with students. So that's one of the areas. Another area I know, mental health first aid is another program that he is working with to bring forward to all of our counselors, social workers, and through our schools to support students in that way. And then, of course, health considerations. We know that will always be part of our consideration as we're working through the remaining months of this pandemic situation, and then, taking us forward. So that brings us to online learning. So that's one of the key factors of this task force work was for us to really prepare for what next year would look like. We needed to know how many online learners we would actually have. So in a moment, I'll break that down for you. But what we learned is that that we will be able to provide both platforms. And we will be able to allocate staff for each platform. So a classroom teacher can devote their teaching to the in-person students, or an online staff person may either have a classroom of online learners at the elementary level or have a section of online learners 6 through 12, and we'll talk a little bit more about the differences there. Elementary instruction will combine synchronous and asynchronous teaching. So there will be like I said, there will be a devoted teacher to those online learners. So they will have a classroom teacher. It may not be the teacher from their school, because we will have combined students from across the district, but they will have opportunities for both independent learning and then direct instruction from their teacher as well for online learning. Middle school and high school will be in an asynchronous model, but they will also have a designated teacher to facilitate the lessons and provide feedback. So while they will not have a structured, scheduled time of day that they have direct instruction from their teacher, that teacher facilitator will be utilizing Canvas to push lessons out, and then will be available. We'll have a time in their school day to meet with students, to go over lessons, to work one-on-one, to work small groups, and provide feedback. And this is another area that was important that we wanted to kind of clarify the why behind this, the rationale for students' enrollment selection taking place for the entire school year. And the reason for this is that we had to dedicate staff for the number of students for these sections. So we have approximately, and this is an approximate number because it changes a little bit daily, very incrementally, but we have about 200 total online students, or total students requesting online learning for next year, and that's K through 12. So it's a very small amount of students, but I think it's important to clarify that when we say it's a small amount, we we were ready and willing to accept whatever number that would have been. So if it would have been 500 students or 1,000 students, that would just have changed our planning. So being that it was a lower number of students just changed the look of our planning a little bit. And again, because we are dedicating staff for either an online option or an in-person option, we have less opportunity for students to move back and forth as we did this year. I think it's important to clarify here, and certainly for all those fans at home that maybe are watching this exciting presentation, and I've talked to a lot of parents the last couple of weeks who are still unsure or maybe anxious or just not ready to commit yet. And of course they did commit and they're saying, what if? We will certainly try to honor those situations if a student needs to change platforms from online to in person. But again, because we have the dedicated staff, we just have to watch our class sizes and our availability. So, it's certainly when we say that the student selection, enrollment selection is for the entire school year, that's not because we don't want to be flexible or support individual needs. We will certainly consider those. If we have class size availability, either way, we would certainly try and make those happen. So I've explained that to many parents that have called and have asked, and so I think that's just important publicly to say that we certainly will try to accommodate those the best we can, but we only have X amount of online teachers and X amount of in-person teachers, and that kind of goes back to that fiscally responsible piece, is that we have to staff the students that we have before us. So by the levels, there's about 57 students enrolled K through 5, and you can see the breakdowns there. Dave Cobb is working with Katie Rebele to staff these sections, and so those will be designated online teachers. There will be a combo grade level for K1, a combo for 2-3, and a combo for 4-5. And again, those students will have access to a designated teacher. They will have Mrs. Smith. She might be a Baldwin teacher, and you might be a Kerrs Mill student, but if you're in first grade, that's going to be your teacher. I don't know if I mentioned this. I skipped this bullet point, and I think this is important to recognize as well. Students will maintain their homeschool connection. So that example I just gave, if it's first grade, Mrs. Smith from Baldwin is the teacher, yet my child goes to Kerrs Mill, my child is still going to have full access connection to Kerrs Mill. So that child is still enrolled at Kerrs Mill. They're eligible to attend events at Kerrs Mill. Parents are part of the PTO at Kerrs Mill. It's kind of like a dual enrollment almost. They're a Kerrs Mill student. They just happen to have a teacher from a different school or an online teacher of record. And that's the same for middle school and high school as well. So I think that's important. And I think that was reassuring to parents that for whatever reason believe online learning is the best for their child, but they still want them to have that connection to their home school, their guidance counselor at that school, social worker, teachers, specialists, that kind of thing. So there's the elementary update. Middle school update. Rockwood Online for middle school is about 50 to 60 students, and I also want to publicly say this number has changed. I know at one point I saw maybe in Rockwood 5 Things or somewhere, we always have a lot of communication going out, it said somewhere around 100 to 120, and I think that was very preliminary. So at this point, as of actually Tuesday, one of the Glenn Hancock, I was talking to him and he said it's between 55 and 63. So I said 50 to 60. I think that's, the ballpark. So we're real close there. We will have an allocated online section for each core class. So that will be math, science, language arts, social studies. So again, if you're an online learner, you will have a math teacher, a science teacher, social studies, and language arts. But the student will work asynchronously. So you will not be scheduled in Mrs. Smith's language arts class and then Mr. Jones' math class, social studies. The student will work asynchronously, but the teacher will have designated time in their day for just those online students. So that classroom teacher will tell their students from 9:30 to 10:30 is my online time. I'm available for questions. We can Zoom together, go over the lesson, do problems together, all those kinds of things, just like we're doing right now. Teachers are doing right now. They just will have a designated time to devote strictly to online students. And again, our online sections will encompass students from all 6 schools, so students will have teachers from various schools. High school, we have approximately 100 students between the 4 schools. This number is a little harder to get our arms around. We think it's about 100 that are taking all courses online. Of course, for years, we've had students that take 1 or 2 classes online and the rest in person. So we know we'll still have that, but we think approximately 100 students are kind of full-time online students. I'm really excited because we have over 30 courses that we're offering with our Rockwood curriculum, and again, a Rockwood instructor will be the facilitator for that class, and we will also have options for credit recovery because we know this year has been a struggle for a lot of our high school kiddos in keeping up with credits and just the structure of the school year. So I'm really excited. The curriculum department has worked really hard to kind of pare down our course offerings, but still we're offering all the courses that students need to meet graduation requirements. So this will still keep students right on track. They won't have to, take summer school or double up if they choose Rockwood Online. Health and safety considerations. This is a big one because this is what, the $1 million question, right? Are we wearing masks next year? That's what everyone wants to know. And I wish I had an answer to that. Certainly we continue to monitor that. We know guidance just came out in the last few days. Things are changing in St. Louis County per the Department of Health. So it really is our goal to minimize the restrictions as much as safely possible. So we know that vaccinations are now available for our 12 and above or 12-year-olds and above. So we'll continue to monitor that throughout the course of the summer as well. We know that the mitigation strategies will still be in place of frequent hand washing. We may still have to be quarantining next fall. Those are kind of the 2 unknowns, is what will quarantining look like and what will masks look like in the fall. But I can speak, I think, on behalf of Dr. Miles, our cabinet, when we meet each week. We're very interested in minimizing the restrictions as much as possible. And we know it is important to a lot of our community members that we evaluate the use of masks as we move into the fall. So that will be something that we will continue to evaluate, based on not only St. Louis County Department of Health, but other medical professionals analyzing our own school district data and our transmission rates and things like that. So that'll all be part of the consideration before we make a final recommendation on the health and safety considerations. There's our website. As Dr. Miles mentioned in his report, coming up here soon, I'm not sure exactly when, but Mary has been working closely with Glenn Hancock, and we have a community feedback process ready to go that all of this information will be available for our community, and we will be asking them for their input on what are their main goals and areas of focus for their child for the upcoming school year, so we can make sure we're meeting their needs as well. Any questions?
I got a few.
Okay.
The middle school, core classes only, no electives?
There are electives as well. I'm sorry, I glossed it.
Okay.
Yes,
No.
absolutely, we have electives as well. Absolutely.
All right, high school, like what electives are offered, and then also, are there any challenges that you foresee doing the virtual?
So electives at the high school, Shelley, help me. I know we have Spanish, French, CTE. Mm-hmm.
A full CTE credit so that students could get that practical arts credit. We offered a fine arts.
Like we just said.
Yeah, fine arts credits so that they could get their fine arts credit. So anything that was a graduation requirement, we made sure that we had an offering there so that students could meet those graduation requirements.
Thank you.
We can do that same question. For those Those classes, you'll have credentialed teachers,
There-
certified,
Yes, absolutely.
like
Yeah,
for fine
there-
arts and Spanish. and-
Yes, there's a lot of misconception about what asynchronous learning is, and what that means is that the instruction is not happening in real time. That's really what that means. We've had a lot of questions about students self-pacing through a class. The teacher still gives due dates. The teacher still works through the pacing of the curriculum like they normally would. It's just that the instruction is not happening in real time
I
necessarily.
understand that part, but I
Yes,
understand the arguments and things.
yes.
So we are at the high school level. Each level is being staffed a little bit differently. But we are actually in the process, and in fact, Katie was she's of course taking the lead on this, but helping clarify this with me today. We will be posting these positions, so they will be online teachers, but they will need to be certified in that content area for sure. So that's right. They will be certified teachers.
I have another question. I'm sorry.
I mean, would you mind using your microphone?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm trying to read my notes at the
That's
same
okay.
time. Under the learning acceleration, you talked about the essential outcomes. Will there be pre and post assessments that will measure whether or not the students at grade level are achieving those, so that we have some data to say it's working, or just that we've laid a blanket down and hope that it works?
For
Let Shelley
instruction,
answer.
yeah, for instructional purposes, we would ask our teachers to formatively assess. We have our STAR assessments that will help us do that benchmark testing for each student, but we're really relying on that formative assessment for that to happen. We do have several things in place that our coaches work with them, our curriculum coordinators work with teachers on formative assessment, and we're actually tackling formative assessment with our middle schools next year for sure. So
Understandably, but formative assessment isn't exactly what I'm talking. I'm talking about pre and post of those essential standards, the outcomes, the learning outcomes, to know that we've actually met them. And formative assessment's fine, but it won't tell you if you pre and post and actually achieved it.
So yes, in many cases the teachers will start with an assessment and then do that formative assessment along the way and compare it to the summative at the end. So yes, some people do that pre and post test. Others will start teaching the grade level content and go ahead and assess as they're going. So it just depends on the teacher's approach to that. And we'll be talking with them about that assessment along the way.
I still question that whether or not that will tell us they've learned the essential skills and outcomes for that previous grade level or for that grade level.
Well, we have proficiency scales for every grade level and every standard that spells out not only the standard, but also all the skills that lead up to that standard. So within that proficiency scale, they should be able to identify what those skills are that are missing so that they can reach that grade level standard. So we would rely on a lot of those as well.
With the virtual academy, do you see any challenges that you foresee? I mean,
Sorry, can you say that again?
Any challenges you foresee with the virtual academy with all three levels?
I don't see any glaring challenges. I mean, we will have challenges,
Sure,
certainly,
sure.
you know.
I'm just saying, if you, I mean, right now with your model, do you see like a sticking point that might become a challenge?
I don't see anything glaring that we haven't already. We've certainly had a lot of test runs this year, right? We've had to learn as we go. So I think that's been helpful. So no, I don't think, I think our teachers, I think the biggest positive is that our teachers will have time to be devoted to one model or the other. So
That's great that, I mean, that's awesome that you.
yeah, I don't foresee any major hurdles, which was the point of the task force, is
Right.
if we did see them, we needed to try and vet those out now. So certainly we'll have bumps along the road. I'm not promising perfection, but.
My next couple of questions are
Okay.
on health and safety.
Sure.
So K through 5, very low spread. Do you think they could start the year maskless, maintain social distancing if needed, and the teacher with a mask or be vaccinated? That's question number one. Question number two is 12 years and older, wear a mask if needed or vaccinate and then maintain social distancing. And then the third one, obviously vaccinations are optional, but will vaccinations be in the student file much like other vaccinations needed for enrollment? That way the school knows that if they're supposed to be wearing a mask and they're not, you know, I guess, make sure that the school issues them one.
So I will let Dr. Miles jump in because those are all topics we discussed at Cabinet this week.
I think those are very difficult questions to ask because the lifetime, a week can go by and so much can change so very, very quickly. I think our focus has been throughout is we want to find a way to remove as many of the restrictions as possible so that we return to a sense of normalcy while we also maintain this environment of safety. So I don't know that it is fully yet possible to specifically answer those questions because we still have questions about what percentage of our students 12 years and older are going to receive a vaccination, what specific percentage of our staff members have or are going to receive by the end of the summer to have received the vaccination. This has always been an evolutionary process as we've gone through trying to determine the plan or plans that we have in place. I think we all want to return to a sense of normalcy as soon as we can.
One thing we discussed, I'll just add something to that, Dr. Miles. I had middle school and high school principals separately. We always meet separately, but back to back this week. And we did talk a little bit about there certainly could be some opportunities, I imagine, for some variation in masking that we hopefully would at least get to a point that it might not be one size fits all. That certainly we know maybe our high schoolers in particular may have more vaccinated students, and so maybe masks could be optional there. Middle school's a little tricky. They're in the middle. That's always what happens there, right? Is that, we do have 11-year-olds in middle school. And then you mentioned the elementary and the low transmission rate. So I really hope, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I hope that our cabinet over the upcoming weeks and months evaluates just those exact things, the data for our elementary numbers, and then looking at that optional masking for middle and high school once we know that potentially more students and teachers will be vaccinated throughout the summer. And so then there could be some opportunity for that next fall.
Lisa, I have an easy question for you. So looking at the elementary, there are going to be 3 teachers. One will teach K1, one will teach 2-3, and 4-5. Will they have other job responsibilities besides just the online learning?
So those are their students. They'll have a class of 20 to 25 or 18 to 26, whatever their number falls into. So yeah, that is their class. That is their. Now they will still come to school. They will report to their school. They will, be a part of that faculty. But no, they will not be teaching other students.
They'll be housed in a school. And
correct.
And so that what would the principal's role then be in supervising that teacher?
I don't really know if I know the answer to that. Do you, Katie? On the principal evaluating the 3, would it just depend on the school they're housed in?
Yeah, so it's actually a really interesting concept. The positions have been posted, they've closed, and it's likely it'll be a new teacher that's hired. So just so we kind of have the background on that. They will be assigned to a building. They will report, just as Lisa said, every day to that building, and they will be assigned to that school, that principal as their evaluator. But to Lisa's points this evening, they could possibly have kids from 19 elementary schools.
Right. Okay.
So they'll be responsible to that principal as the evaluator, but 19 principals will be responsible to the kids, if that makes sense. So it'll be really a collaborative effort. It's really a new frontier for us. We've certainly shared teachers before, but maybe not at 19 schools or 4 high schools. So, but our principals will do amazing work, but they will be assigned to one.
At the middle school, will it be the similar setup?
So the middle school is a little bit different, and so is the high school. So each level's a little bit different. So middle school teachers will have dual job duties. So for example, if I'm a 6th grade language arts teacher, I might teach 4 sections of in-person students, and my 5th section might be 6th grade language arts. And again, I might have 22 kids from 6 schools. And so again, back to Katie's example, you know, let's say I'm housed at Wildwood Middle School. I teach my 4 sections of in-person students. My 5th section is online, and then I'm responsible for those students. And high school, the difference at high school, we are again back to, you know, hiring teachers. We will have a math certified person, a language arts, science. We're looking for a dual certification. I don't know if we'll be able to find that. And then social studies. And so that teacher, there will be one housed at each high school. So again, they'll report to a specific high school, and then they will have all the social studies content for the 4 high schools. And then the electives, we're looking at doing 0-hour contracts, stipends for teachers to pick up extra sections. So that's where it will be, not only will they be certified, but they'll be our existing staff who are picking up an extra,
Okay, that would make sense.
an extra section.
Yeah, yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
I don't know who this can go to, so anybody that could answer it, that's great. Vaccination. So as you know, to be enrolled in school, you have to have certain vaccinations to be enrolled. Now, I'm sure there's some type of waiver that people take that are against vaccinations. Would the same kind of apply for the COVID one, or, I mean?
I think that's a state regulation typically, and so we'll look for guidance from the Department of Health and Human Services.
I mean, I'm just, because I know there's state regulated vaccinations that kids have to have, and I'm sure there's some type of waiver that people that are against vaccinations are allowed to still enter school. So that's why I just wanted to ask that question.
Right now, I believe, according to Amy Weir from our meeting just Tuesday, right now it is still optional, so it would not be something that the parents would have to provide documentation. She did mention that we'll have a way to track it next fall, but we won't even require parents to show proof. That right now it's still optional.
One more question about elementary. So the students that are online, will they also be able to participate like in reading intervention and other types of interventions like that? The students that are online, would they still be able to participate in like reading intervention?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So they
Yes.
could still opt in for that period of time, meet with the reading intervention teacher.
Because now we're able to drill down. We know exactly who those students are. And so really any student who really needs an individualized learning plan, whether they have an IEP or not, we know who they are. So like at the middle school, and I just know this because we just sat down with our list of students on Tuesday, and so we know which students might need ESOL services. We know students that might need reading intervention who have an IEP, so we are able to match services with that.
So they'll still receive any and all
Yep.
services that are.
Yes.
Yes.
Good question.
ESOL, that includes that, and we're working with special school district. They're working on that as we speak.
Correct. And that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, is that special school district has been working right alongside us in all of this work, so that, you know, to Tom's point, you know, do we see any challenges? We wanted to make sure that we would be able to offer all of those services regardless of which platform a family selected.
So I have some questions. When's the last date for the enrollment sign up for either virtual or in school?
Well, it was supposed to be a while ago.
Yeah.
So again, we've just tried to be accommodating to folks. And so really this week and next week, we're just following up with any of our families either that we haven't heard from, or I know at the elementary they just got done doing this, and middle school is doing it right now. They're just checking in with those families that have enrolled for online to say, and the high school's doing it via letter. I know the high school mentioned that. So all levels are checking in with those online enrolled families just to make sure that's still where they want to be. So the deadline is a little bit loose, but we're hoping we've captured most everyone at this point.
Can we assume also that if a parent doesn't respond, that we're going to put them in school? Not
That's
online?
what we did do.
Okay. One other thing. Something that I became aware of is that in some school districts in some states, some parents are requesting that their sons and daughters repeat the grade that they just finished. Does Missouri allow that? And have you had anybody come in and says, hey, my kid didn't learn a thing this year. I want him to repeat ninth grade. And and how would you handle that?
We've had some of those, but we have those every year. We have them every year. We have them in non-pandemic years. And I quite honestly don't know that we had many more. I know Shelley's involved in a few of them. I've been involved in a few of them. We really work through those on a case-by-case basis. We, in the Rockwood School District, do not believe retention is the best academic approach, regardless of grade level. So we usually are working with those families to make a plan of intervention for that student moving forward. So we handle those on a case-by-case basis, and we've had a few this year, but I don't think any more than we've had in the past.
Two other opinions. It seems from listening to the comments this year, from when we started virtual and then went to in-school virtual, that a lot of the concerns that came out, I don't remember very many, if any, from parents of students that are actually in school. The complaints or the concerns, complaints, concerns came from the parents to the online learning. So with that in mind, then I think the success for next year, if we go maskless or mask or whatever it is you have in school and kids are in there, the success of the next year is going to be how well the online does. So that puts a lot of pressure on online, and Shelley's sitting behind me, and she's not shooting me with darts yet, but puts a lot of pressure on that. So I think that's the key to success next year. No matter, and the in-school is successful because the teachers do such a wonderful job. The online is successful because teachers do such a wonderful job. And it has to be organized so that it is a wonderful situation. And the last one is whatever decision you're going to make, or we're going to make about mask, no mask, and so forth, let's see if we can make that early enough so that it's not a last-minute situation. Let's don't go like August 22nd and say, oh, we're going to require a mask. Because I think that will defeat whatever we do anyhow.
Right. Well, and again, watching what happens in our region and in our county and all the other aspects are always part of that consideration too. But I agree wholeheartedly. I would love to be able to tell parents as soon as possible so they know what to expect for their children's school
Even with COVID, there's a trend. It's not a one-day trend that you bump up by 200. It's a trend through weeks. So if it's going to be a problem, we'll get on it quick. But boy, let's try to make the decisions as soon as possible too.
I agree.
If you look at all available data, I think we're headed in the right direction. The CDC's recommendations, the loosening of restrictions across the country. Let's remain hopeful and optimistic that the trends remain extremely positive and that there's a great return to normalcy on our first day of school next year. That would be such a wonderful celebration. The first day of school always is, but if we could return to that sense of normalcy without masking and that sense of being normal once again, that we get to see smiles and hugs, high fives, and handshakes once again, that would be a dream come true.
And some of it depends on what the status of Dr. Sam Page is. Back in August, he may not be able to make those decisions. It may be a state legislature decides to do it, and I'm concerned about that. But yeah, I think we're definitely going in the right direction. I really like what we're doing now.
So I had a few. So, a couple months back, we participated in a study with a few districts around the state with regards to infection rates within our schools, quarantine rates, all those things. Will that information be involved in some of the decisions, number one, and number two, will the board ever get to see the results of that study?
I was not at the meeting that Dr. Newland attended, our cabinet meeting, so I don't know, Dr. Miles, if he gave an update to us at that point. I sure hope that data would be part of our decision making. That was the reason we participated in it. Did he share that?
Absolutely. The challenge for Rockwood, we didn't have many cases. They were anticipating more cases in the study from Rockwood. We didn't have many cases, but we can get you that information. And as I think I think that information will be more broadly distributed throughout the state as all school districts make plans for the fall.
We had quite a few quarantine cases, obviously. People, kids have been quarantined, so I wonder, will we be looking at that data as well as to make decisions with regards to our quarantine procedures and maybe even getting rid of the quarantine altogether?
We could, because I think we want to keep kids in school as much as we can.
Yeah.
I know that was the intent of the study, was that also that not just the infection rate, but the quarantine and the process of quarantine. So again, I wasn't at the last meeting with Dr. Newland, but I imagine that information is available.
Change that process some on the quarantine, because I think you sent us a memo on that they don't necessarily quarantine the whole class, and all this. Is that right? You've changed some of those guidelines?
We've made some revisions throughout this entire, since the beginning. We've been monitoring and revising as needed as we could.
Right. Good.
I have one really quick question. So we have about 200 virtual learners right now signed up. How does that 200 number compare to pre-COVID online numbers for kids in Rockwood? I'm sure it's higher, but
Pre-COVID.
when we
I
had
see what
kids
you're
request online, before it became a daily conversation.
Interestingly enough, and Shelley can talk better to this, but this exact question came up with the high school principals. They actually have less online learners now than pre-COVID. We do anticipate that changing a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, when students realize, maybe they could take 1 or 2 online classes, but that's okay. We've always had that. They've always had the opportunity to take something online and still be a full-time student in their home school. So I feel like pre-COVID numbers were higher than they are now for our online learners. Would you agree, Shelley?
Yeah, they were at the high school level for sure, and we will probably need to talk to our high school students and survey them about other courses that they might want to see online. We had a lot of requests for other courses that we didn't have in the catalog. We have not had any elementary students up until this point, because up until this year, there was no vendor for K-5. So now that we have ours, and Launch has one, and so they all came out this year out of necessity. So now we do have several students at the elementary level, and then middle school, we had a few kids that were accessing online for a few classes, but not the numbers that we have this year. And those still aren't very large.
How does it work if a student chooses to take a couple courses online, but then attend? Do they go home and come back, or how does that work? I mean,
They can go and come back, or they can stay at school and sit in a study hall and do their online work.
we don't have a whole lot of those, do we?
We have less now than we used to. We used to have quite a few that in each school, but we have less now. But that'll change as the school year goes on and kids, select different courses.
The online law says that we actually have to provide a supervised place for students during the school day if they choose to take online.
It's the unstringent guidelines that Missouri puts out on homeschooling. I think we're going to see increases on that. But how do you know if they've learned anything? That's the hard part. And so that's another piece of the puzzle, and they all fit together, it seems like. That wasn't wanting an answer. That was just a statement again.
Thank you for clarifying.
No question in that one.
Well, thank you and your team, all of the people. I know there's a ton of people involved in this, and so we appreciate all of your work.
You've got Dr. Counts leading and facilitating, coordinating. You've got Dr. Rebele working on staffing. You've got Dr. Willott working on curriculum instruction assessment. There have been so many individuals involved in the task force. Kudos and words of thanks and appreciation to you for that.
We do.
And so, as we wrap things up, next up we have our proposed agenda for the June 10th, 2021 Board of Education meeting, which is also our work session day, so wear comfy clothes. We'll be here for a while.
That's right.
So we'll begin at noon that day, and we will hear some updates on the way forward. Sorry, I muffled my mask. And then we will complete our virtual training with MSBA, recess for a short time, and then begin our usual meeting. So you see the agenda up here.
It's all on June 10th?
It's all on June 10th.
Let me see. Oh, I can't do that. June 10th.
Yeah, I'll have to check with them.
Dr. Kinder?
Board session, 12 to 6, right. Got it.
Good, we'll see you here. All right, then we have future agenda presentations and events to attend. And buckle up for this as well. Graduations and Relay for Life, as Tammy mentioned, is tomorrow. The drive-through event at Marquette High School, streaming on Facebook as well. Senior parades, 1, 2, 3, 4. ILC completion ceremony on the 27th, and then our graduation ceremonies with the, I'm not even going to say the words, the dates if needed the following week, because we're not going to. We're going to have beautiful weather 4 days in a row.
Gotten our board passes for the, I got one tonight, 2 of them.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Dr. Kinder doesn't have a cap and gown, but he's got the packet, and all of you have that packet in your cap and gown bag. And the top sheet tells all the information if you're going to any of the parades, what time you need to be there, where you need to go, because each high school is different. So I would read that pretty carefully next week. And then 3 out of the 4 high schools are requiring a parking pass to get into the Powerplex, and those are all in there. The yellow one is just late because Karen brought it tonight, but I wanted you to all have those tonight. You should have 3 parking passes in your packet there. The yellow one, there's a green one from Marquette, and a white one from Eureka.
What one?
The yellow one is the one I just gave you from, right, I think I see it.
Gave
right.
it to me?
Yep.
She handed it out today.
I have more here. I just got it from,
We already have the Summit one, right?
pardon me?
We already have the Summit one?
It's not requiring one.
Summit is not requiring one.
To go to Powerplex?
Nope, no parking pass.
So you can drive 2 cars by yourself, Dr.
I'll do
Kinder.
that. I'll try that.
Dr. Kinder wants another yellow one so he could sell that on eBay.
I'll get you,
Yeah,
I've got
I
extra
can't
yellows over here.
I can't find my yellow one.
He's trying to sell them. He's going to scalp them.
And
I'm stressed out.
please open up your cap and gowns earlier rather than later. So if there's a problem, we can get it taken care of, because every year there's a problem. So I'm happy to help, but it would be good to have everybody look through them to make sure they're the
Try
right
'em
ones.
on. Yep. Thank you to Ty Dennis and the officers who are here tonight, providing
Yes.
safety for all of us. It means a lot to us. I just want you to know that. And if there's nothing else, then we will adjourn the meeting.